Segment 3, Gold and Black Live, I'd say saving the best for last with Tom Dienhart and Brian Newbert joining me. Want to thank our guests. Ken Halpin joined us in segment 1, and then also Ethan Morton and Cassidy Harden talking to Purdue Center for Cancer Research and all the Hammer Down Cancer event, Little Purdue basketball. They were both great, and we appreciate them very much. All right, there is a football game tomorrow night, as I always say. Purdue takes on Nebraska in what will be a sold-out Ross-Age Stadium, and promises to be an electric event. Purdue only 5-11. I looked that up in night games in Ross-Ade. Not that matters, but Jeff Brohm has won 3 of them, including a game this year against Florida Atlantic. But Tom, a lot of storylines to this one. When you have an interim coach in Nebraska, you have a program that's proud like Nebraska, looking for a coach, and yet Purdue a double-digit favorite. You've looked at this game all week as of Friday afternoon. Where are you, and what you think we will see tomorrow night?
Yeah, like you said, a Nebraska team coming in that's playing pretty well. Won their last 2 games, have some momentum. They've simplified things on defense. Of course, they have the new coordinator, Bill Bush, so they have a little bit of confidence. They're tied for first place in the Big Ten West with Purdue and Illinois. So they got nothing to lose too, guys, right? This is house money for Nebraska, and they can play loose and free. So that's always a good mindset to be able to play with. So Purdue's got to have its guard up, guys. 5 Western Division opponents in a row to come up. And let's be honest, right? If Purdue has any delusion of winning this division, you got to beat Nebraska. I know they're a 14-point favorite, so the pressure's on Purdue. It'll be interesting to see how they look on Saturday night here.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting event. That night event, Purdue's played Nebraska. I'd forgotten with the 17 game, the Nebraska's 25-24 win in Ross-Ade.
Yeah.
I'll ask you both who the trivia question is. Who was their quarterback? It was a class, and Riker.
Riker Fife, isn't that his name?
Riker. Yeah, that was who it was. And Purdue led that game 24-12 in the fourth quarter and lost it under Coach Jeff Brohm's first season. But Brian, you look at this one and looking at it from the big picture, it is, as Tom said, a huge game for Purdue if the Boilermakers entertain hopes of winning the West Division, and they do. Purdue does, but it should be an interesting one tomorrow night.
Yeah, I mean, you want to beat the beatable opponents on your schedule, but when you look at the Big Ten West, they're all beatable. So It's not like there are any, quote unquote cupcakes here. You want to win your home games, obviously, even though, Purdue has played pretty well away from Ross-Ade Stadium. It is going to be interesting to see what kind of Nebraska you get here. 14 is a big number for the spread, if you ask me. It'll be interesting to see what you get out of Nebraska. I think, the one thing the last couple of weeks have shown us is that the interim coach is not a death knell for one season. You look at how Wisconsin responded to Paul Chryst's firing by destroying Northwestern. Now, I still don't know if that's a positive reflection of Wisconsin as much as it's an indictment of how far Northwestern's fallen, but be that as it may, still, anytime you win the way they won, that's pretty impressive. Obviously, Nebraska goes out to Rutgers, beats Rutgers. That was a game they very easily could have lost.
Yeah.
Nebraska's MO under Scott Frost was losing games they should have won. So for Nebraska then to maybe win a game they should have lost, maybe that's a sign of, kind of the tide turning for them for whatever reason. So you obviously can't take any of these teams lightly. If Purdue wants to credibly contended in the Big Ten West, you got to win these home games against teams that you're a heavy favorite against. I do think Purdue still has to be better. I think, Purdue having won its last 2 Big Ten games shouldn't mask the fact that there's some things here that, still need to get cleaned up, still need to improve. I don't like the fact the injuries are mounting for Purdue the way they are. But Purdue's just got to keep putting its best foot forward here, keep improving, and kind of let the chips fall where they may.
Yeah, speaking of those injuries, Tom, obviously Purdue's running game, which only amassed 13 yards last week at Maryland. Devin Mockabee is one of the, and Kobe Lewis may be the sole survivors of who we will see on Saturday night. And as Brian pointed out, injuries are part of the is part of it. When you go into week 70s, are going to happen. But Purdue's got some tough ones because the offensive line is thin, running back room is thin. You've lost. Those are key cogs in an offense that is, as we've talked about, really hasn't fully, at least on paper, hasn't fully hit stride yet.
Yeah, you'd like to think here Aiden O'Connell is another week removed from the supposed rib injury at Syracuse on September 17th. I think we've seen him progressively get better in recent weeks, Minnesota, then Maryland. So I'd like to think he's back to being the Aiden O'Connell we all were accustomed to seeing. So I think that should be a positive on Saturday for Purdue's offense. You talked about the ground game. King Doerue sounds like he's going to dress. Game time decision. I don't think he's going to play. Devin Mockaby's probably going to start. Of course, Dylan Downing's out with a foot injury. Kobe Lewis, I'm sure we'll see some reps. What I'm eager to see is Tyrone Tracy.
Yeah.
Jeff Brom is going to be a guy who gets some carries back there. I think that's where he probably always should have been to begin with. So it will be interesting to see how much work Tracy gets carrying the ball from a true running back position on Saturday night. And, the wide receiving core guys, Charlie Jones is banged up. Everybody's banged up now, right?
Yeah.
But I guess he's got some lower body issues. He continues to fight through. He doesn't practice that much. And, but I think on the positive note, sounds like Abdur Rahman Yassin is going to play for the first time in an extended way on Saturday. Brock Thompson's still a few weeks away, I think. But we did see another positive sign last Saturday with Mershawn Rice. I think he had 5 catches. So I need Mershawn Rice to keep continuing to step up along with Sheffield. Of course, maybe Deion Burks here too for a receiving core that's still looking for a real compliment to Charlie Jones.
Yeah. And it'll be interesting to see against the Nebraska pass defense that's is challenged, and maybe some opportunities for Aiden O'Connell to have a big day. Brian, Jalen Graham and that defense, and again, Jalen Graham was only the story of the defense last week. The Purdue run defense has been pretty darn good all year. You've been watching Purdue football for a long time. It's about as good as it's been, at least so far, so good. It harkens back to maybe 2003, but even this run defense statistically is about as good as it's good. Is that to make Purdue really interesting? Because you like you keep saying, Purdue needs to score more, but they can start, it appears, with the basic premise that they're going to be able to stop other teams' run game. Is that a fair assessment in your view?
Yeah, I think they're focusing on it. I think they're putting extra bodies around the line of scrimmage, and they're really making it an emphasis. So that's a pragmatic thing to do in the Big Ten when so many people want to run the ball. It does open you up maybe a little bit in the back half of your defense, especially when you're in man-to-man as much as Purdue is. And, Purdue's been burned by that a few times this season, but that's, what you've kind of signed up for here in this philosophical shift the last 2 years, where you want to be more aggressive on defense. You want to take some chances. You want to push offenses behind the sticks whenever you can. But when you want to do that, you need to complement it with, high scoring offense to give your defense the sort of leeway to do that kind of thing. And that's where I think Purdue still has a little bit of upside left. I think it can be a little more explosive on offense. It can be a little bit more innovative on offense. Things like that. It can just do a better job finishing halves, starting halves, things like that.
Finishing halves, certainly.
I think if Purdue just gets 4 or 5 more points on the board every week, I think, their chances to have a really good season, enhanced considerably. I know that's not exactly a really bold statement to say the more points you score, the better you are.
That's true, though.
It's just, if Purdue could have just stolen one more touchdown here and there a couple of times to this point this season, you're talking about the difference between 4 and 2 and a couple of nail biters having gone a couple different ways. And, Purdue being in the top 20 national.
Yeah, no doubt. If you think about that, and I know we all have, if Purdue is 6-0 right now, Penn State's ranked what? They're in the top 10. If Purdue is 6-0, they might be sitting right about there. Maybe not quite that high, but that's the difference of just a couple things that, as Purdue fans lament, went wrong from that standpoint. All right, but Tom, because you pay such good attention to the rest of the league. Handicap what we see. I mean, Illinois, I guess my question, Illinois, Minnesota tomorrow. Who's if you're a Purdue fan, who should you be rooting for? Or, you can't have a scoreless tie anymore. What matters? And as you look at the rest of this race, yes, Purdue might be an underdog next week at Wisconsin. I suppose they could be an underdog Illinois, but Purdue's got, if they can get through Nebraska, there's a lot of reason to believe that Purdue can win the rest of its games.
Yeah, both teams have a Big Ten loss already. Obviously, I think from a Purdue standpoint, maybe having Illinois give Minnesota another Big Ten loss just because Purdue's going to get a crack at Illinois here still down the stretch. And they can obviously saddle them with another loss. So I guess if you're a Purdue fan, maybe you're cheering for Illinois to knock off Minnesota, just to knock them down another run with the second Big Ten loss. And yeah, you're right. After this week, Purdue goes to Wisconsin to close out the month. Then they're off. And that sets up, obviously, a very interesting November with 2 home games and 2 away games alternating with Iowa at home. That's going to be a very interesting ball game, I think, for the Boilermakers. Then they go to Illinois, then you have Northwestern at home, then you go to IU. So, I mean, there's a chance Purdue could be 6-2 going into its bye week. I had it predicted to be, I think 6-2 or 5-3, I think. So they still would be on course in my book for a 9-win season. So you're right. Plenty of runway left in this season, plenty of opportunity for Purdue to maybe still grab that brass ring, win its first ever Big Ten West title. And I think a lot of the matchups favor Purdue. Brian sort of been boiling over, did some Pro Football Focus analysis of that Nebraska offensive line. They've got some real issues at the tackle spot. And that's the one part of the Nebraska team that I think is kind of scary is their offense. They've got a big 3 of their quarterback, Casey Thompson, the running back, Anthony Grant, the wide receiver, Trey Palmer, who's a transfer from LSU. They can make some plays. You don't want to let these guys get confidence and stay in the game. Maybe Purdue can get some pressure on Thompson, force some turnovers, and get some short fields. Who knows? Maybe even get a pick 6. The last time these teams played, Purdue had 4 INTs, I believe, and Jalen Graham ran one back for a touchdown. So, not letting Casey Thompson get comfortable, not letting that Nebraska offense get on track is going to be a big goal of this Purdue defense.
Yeah, no doubt from that standpoint. Brian, you did make a trip up to Minneapolis this week, and basketball will be a big focal point. Purdue opens up its exhibition season on November 2nd against Truman State. But just a takeaway from what you saw, Matt Painter being kind of always is the elder statesman, it seems, and at Big Ten Media Day, and always has some interesting things to say. But just your takeaways from that, and maybe where you think Purdue basketball, the men's team, is right now as it heads into the last couple of weeks of preparation before the season.
Well, I mean, there's going to be a lot of figuring out that needs to be done. I think this is probably one of those seasons where the first couple of weeks really kind of, might not be as smooth as the last couple of weeks are because, so many people are acclimating to new positions. There's so many new guys, so many freshmen kind of figuring things out, but also Purdue, having to figure out who does what the best and how to best put this player or that player in the best positions to succeed, how this player fits with this player, kind of things like that. So I could see there being a real kind of feeling out period with this team. You remember a few years back when Carson Edwards was a junior, remember they didn't beat a high major team in non-conference because they were figuring things out. And somewhere along the line, it just clicked and they ended up winning the Big Ten and, damn near going to the Final Four. I'm not saying that same outcome lies in store for this team, but I'm saying that same process might, because you've got your Ethan Mortons moving into much more prominent roles. You've got Zach Edey being the guy for the first time in his basketball life. You've got Braden Smith taking over at point guard when he's never played a college game. You've got Fletcher Lawyer, walking right into big minutes as a freshman. You've got Caleb Furst and Trey Kaufman-Renn presumably coming off the bench, kind of figuring out how to play together. You got Brandon Newman having to make a huge step from last season, obviously. It's just that there's just so many moving parts with this team here that that's what practice is for, but that's also what the first couple of weeks of the season are going to be for.
Yeah, no doubt. That's going to be an interesting November for Purdue. Some games early on that may not be, but you got Marquette. You got to go play what you got to play West Virginia as well. Florida State will loom early in December, in addition to big start of Big Ten play. So Purdue will get tested at least a little bit early on in the schedule. All right, guys. Predictions are probably on the site by this point in time or close to it. We'll see what happens. It's going to be a really entertaining game, I think, tomorrow night in Ross-Ade Stadium when Purdue takes on Nebraska. Tom and Brian, thanks so much. And we want to thank our sponsors also, Triple X on the hill, but on the level. A Purdue tradition since 1929. Greg and Carrie Ayersman have been great supporters of Gold and Black for many, many years. And State Farm agent Trent Johnson, trentismyagent.com. I think he's about to know he's the conference championship time in high school, so I don't think he's working the playoffs yet, but he and his referee crew will be out and about for serving the public, so to speak, in a referee's way. He does a great job with that, and a great friend of the show. So thanks to Gordon also, and to Mary Truax back at the WLFI for all that they do for us. And we will be back next week heading into that Wisconsin game, talk a little bit more of Purdue football and have some fabulous guests and door prizes. No, maybe no door prizes, but we'll have that as part of the show next week. All right. Have a great week, everybody. And thanks again for watching. And we'll see you next week on Gold and Black Live.